Yuji fights a monster in the woods. Assisted by a few non-human companions, he easily takes it down and goes, leaving a magic stone behind. In Fasten's Adventurers Guild, Gale speaks of a slime that breathes fire, but only receives ridicule from the others. Just then, the young man walks in with a slime on his shoulder. The staff asks if he's given up on his request, but it's the opposite. The slime jumps down and lets out bunches of flowers from its mouth, prompting the shocked lady to call the branch chief. The others are in awe, never having seen so many dry flowers in one place, and gathered by a tamer no less. The chief, Aegis, appears, saying he brought enough to supply potions for 2 years. As if used to him, he agrees to buy everything, although they don't use potions much. Yuji questions the claim, saying he fought a tough monster earlier. A guard suddenly burst in, reporting a smoke signal and an incoming horde of beasts heading in one direction. While they're confused, slimes stationed in the woods let their master know that it's coming for their town. Facing reality, the chief instructs everyone to flee, regardless of the citizens that'll be left behind. They're far outnumbered, and the only option is to keep as many of them alive as possible. Just then, Yuji says he has an idea and takes out a dragon bone. As a tamer, he can use it once to recreate a dragon's flame and wipe them all out. The others doubt the declaration, but Gale recognizes the slime on his shoulder and suggests that they let him have a go. As he asks how they can help, they immediately get to work, distributing potions and forming a barricade by the gate. Meanwhile, Yuji speaks to his proud wolf, who's racing through the woods to gather all the slimes together. The master boosts his stamina and speed and arrives at a tower overlooking the town. The first wave of monsters comes, and the adventurers work hard to hold them back. Wanting to finish it quickly, the tamer summons various windows, taking in all the information to form a perfect plan. Just then, Dryad calls out, reporting that there's a shady guy who's been standing around, holding a magic stone. Identifying it as the source of monsters, he tells his slimes to get close, to let him get rid of it. The guild staff sees him using magic. Meanwhile, the slimes jump in as ordered, and he uses them as a channel to release his spells and deactivate the magic stone with ease. Defeated, the shady man screams and takes his life, preventing them from taking him in. Proud Wolf nears the city, and they see the adventurers struggling against the endless horde. On his orders, a few slimes bounce their way and blast fire spells towards the enemies. Although things are going well, Yuji notes that the monsters are more spread out than he expected, and using hellfire would swallow the town, regardless of him putting up a barrier. Getting an idea, he simulates and calculates, rapidly perfecting his plan of action. Already knowing that the staff, Lily, is watching, he asks her to have Aegis call the adventurers back to town. He tells his slimes to do the same, and spread out in regular intervals around the border. Meanwhile, Team Dryad is instructed to head underground, where they should be safe from the shock. Everything is set and ready, except for one tough monster pushing Gale and Rajan back. They tell him to leave them and commence the counterattack, but Proud Wolf suddenly pounces, taking it out in one strike and carrying the two back inside. Satisfied, Yuji conjures a barrier around the entire town and casts hellfire throughout the surrounding area. Everyone is in awe, unable to believe that a tamer is capable of such firepower, as such spells would claim even the strongest magicians' lives. Hearing this, Lily runs up the tower again. Although everything is engulfed in flames, a few monsters somehow survive. Yuji falls to his knees, having spent more magic power than he should have. It hurts, but he considers sacrificing a few health points to cast another. A moment later, he tells the slimes to prepare again, ignoring the guild staff's warnings. He forms a barrier like before, and casts hellfire again, finally clearing all enemies. Completely spent, he falls unconscious. Later, Aegis and the others are out inspecting the burnt woods, and see something unbelievable. As they gather it all up and head back, Dryad watches from the shadows. Yuji wakes up in a room much later, and Lily brings a meal to help him recover. Meanwhile, the entire town is celebrating, and talking about how he saved them all. As she leaves to let him rest, the young man remembers his past life, spent endlessly in the office. He sneaks out with his companions, who jump around while talking about their magnificent performance earlier. His abrupt disappearance is reported to Aegis, who has something more pressing at hand. In the woods, they found the lantern that the perpetrator was carrying, and found the mark of a rising cult they'd been hearing about. As they talk about this, one of Yuji's slimes observes, connecting the information to its master. Walking past the woods, they reach the edge of a cliff and the village they're headed to. In the woods, an old man tells his henchmen to finish the job by the new moon, talking about their target, who's a young and unknown adventurer. Meanwhile, Yuji and his companions arrive at Kilia and quickly move to explore the huge city. That said, the wolf and the amount of slimes are causing too much of a scene. They see a meat shop and clear its products out of hunger. While eating, they see a crowd, so the butcher explains that a high priest has come from Central, and people are gathering to listen to his word. At the guild, he's nearly rejected from registering because of his Tamer class. Fortunately, the staff sees an enemy detection skill and agrees to take him in, as it's valuable for parties. While looking through the guild requests, Rodis, Tina, and Lisa approached, wondering if he wants to form a party. Quickly agreeing, the newcomer introduces himself, and the dagger specialist questions if a tamer can even fight, not wanting extra baggage. However, the two others like him better than the complainer, so they eventually make peace and head out together. Their request is for reconnaissance of a stone dragon's shelter. It's not a combat mission, but they prepare a formation for safety purposes, putting the tamer at the back. Doing his job at enemy detection, he gathers information from his companions, spread throughout the forest. They soon spot 5 wolf-like creatures 2 kilometers away. Rodis rushes in to confirm it and sees that one is missing. It jumps from above, but quickly falls to the dagger specialist, who easily takes down the rest of the pack. With a better grasp of each other's strengths, they move forward and eventually set up camp far from their original path. It's often a better choice to avoid bandits when traveling in small groups. Recalling his skill at tracking, they ask how he learned, but he says that he just found out one day. As they push for a better answer, Rodis suddenly says it's time for bed and assigns their schedules for keeping watch. One random day, he woke up in an unfamiliar forest, confused as he was just working overtime in the office. He's surrounded by floating windows, indicating his stats and class. Moreover, beside him is a slime he's apparently tamed. Accepting the new life quite easily, he follows the slime into a house in the woods. There, he finds the grimoire of divine destruction, and is suddenly notified that he's learned all the magic inside it. Around him, various slimes gathered, all happily asking to be tamed. Now his companions, they jumped around and read the rest of the books in the house, allowing him to obtain all the skills and stats that were hidden inside. Earning the title of sage, the slimes chanted his name in joy. It's been a week since then. He wakes up to the voice of his companions, who inform him that Rodis took off during his watch. Moreover, Tina and Lisa are also missing. In the woods, Proud Wolf sees the man running in the dark, and the 2 girls watching him from the shadows. The archer suspected him when he set the schedule, knowing he wasn't the sort to worry about others. The lancer considers asking Yuji for help, but believes that a tamer isn't cut out for combat situations. He suddenly takes his dagger out and throws it at the bushes to hit a slime right on its body. Fortunately, its structure allows it to leave unscathed. Running farther away, Rodis sees multiple trap wires, but skillfully avoids them all. As the 2 wonder where he is, he enters the guarded tent and meets with the old man from before. There, he reports and reveals his plan to sell his party members and brand them as runaways like before. Wanting to move quickly before the moon turns blue, they get to work. In the woods, the 2 girls decide to fall back for now, but hit the tripwire and alert the goons as planned. Knowing they have no choice but to fight, fear strikes their eyes. However, instead of the girls, the men see an ominous creature in the dark. Not knowing what it is, the leader tells them to fall back for now. Actually, it was just a figure formed by Proud Wolf and the slimes. Meanwhile, Yuji is looking through his list of spells, choosing a weak-looking spell to use in their camp. The slimes move in and encase the target in a stronger than expected ice spell. Soon after, they eject the old man from their mouth, also frozen solid. The surprised girls identify him as Gelios, an infamous bandit with a bounty on his head. The slime gobbles him up again, and the 2 say that they should have asked him for help earlier. Remembering the endless pile of tasks in his previous life, he thinks he'd rather not have people depend on him. Since they're down a member, they consider heading back with an unfinished quest, but Yuji volunteers to use his slimes and keep their journey safe. Looking for a spot to set camp, he throws the one on his shoulder high up, allowing it to scan the surroundings. The ladies barely do anything, as his companions handle the entire process. Thinking about the old man's proverb about the blue moon's calamity, he, and several others look up at the sky, illuminated by a bright blue moon. The trio looks around, still searching for the Earth Dragon. A strong gust unexpectedly blows, and Tina says it must be from Delight Canyon, also known as the Valley of the Wind. Old tales claim that the wind comes from the dragon's breath. They spend more time on the unfruitful search, but the ladies are sure his slimes will eventually find their target. Their overestimation makes him remember the time when he underwent the adventurer registration examination. For one, he broke the magic measurement device with the slightest touch. During the combat test, he conjured a powerful fireball without chanting and blasted the target into pieces after chanting. Everyone watching him was stunned and left speechless. Now wanting to avoid attention, he activates a magic limiter skill, reducing his power just enough to get the job done. However, the two are still surprised, hearing that his slimes have been killing all the monsters without assistance. Just then, the sky unexpectedly turned purple. A priest named Style asks the branch chief, Rayard, if he knows about the Blue Moon's prophecy. As he takes out a book of legends, a calamity falls from the sky, shattering the ground and clearing the sky's haze. Spreading its wings and tail, an enormous blue dragon lets out a deafening roar. Yuji tells his companions to vacate and gather, and lets his party members know what's happening. Seeking safety, they head into the canyon, known to be free from strong monsters. As Proud Wolf and the Slimes run ahead to clear the enemies, they encounter the powerful gust of wind and continue to pass through. However, they encounter a large bear, too much for the wolf to handle, but still not a challenge for the Slimes. While informing their master, the ground suddenly split open as the Earth Dragon emerged from the rocks. The ladies retreat, but Yuji wants to test his spells out and releases a few weak spells, upping the power little by little. Annoying it with small attacks, he eventually baits it to charge at him. With perfect timing, the powerful gust hits, giving him an opportunity to release a blazing explosion. The ladies finally come out of hiding and see the dragon's corpse on the ground. Not thinking that he caused it himself, they guess that he used the explosive mines under the Earth's surface. They return to the guild with ease and shock the staff by announcing that they've not only defeated the stone dragon, but also captured Gelios and his gang. As they're being paid a hefty sum for their services, Rayard hears the news and asks to speak to the Tamer. Convening various important people, the chief explains that he'd like to discuss the Blue Dragon of Delight. Before beginning, he calls on Yuji to give a description of the beast. Using a spell, he etches his memory onto a sheet of paper. Seeing the detailed photo, Style takes out a book of legends and shows a page showing the very same dragon. It's said to have wiped out an entire continent in 3 days, only stopped by a divine emissary said to have power rivaling the gods. However, all records of that person were torn away. Getting an idea of the dragon's purpose, the chief recalls a time from 30 years ago, when the sun climbed the highest during the summer solstice. The moon eclipsed the sun, and a ritual was carried out at the cathedral. Its effect was supposed to take effect 30 years later, which was just a week ago. It was the spirit summoning ceremony, meant to ward off calamity. Suddenly, the sky went dark again, and the Slimes see the blue dragon become larger. He relays the information to the group, deducing that its size must be related to the darkened sky. Recognizing the threat, Rayard refuses to be stuck by fear and orders an all-out attack at dawn. Later, Tina and Lisa run up to Yuji, sharing that they've joined the attack squad and have nothing to fear with him there. As they leave, he sees Style, staring and smiling at him. They exchange introductions, and the priest takes something out, saying he wants to bestow something on the young man. Brought from the capital, he reveals a sword, saying none of them could ascertain its value, and adding that he might find a use for it. The window's appraisal shows that it's the dagger of Kethis, unbreakable, and focuses its wielder's magic to the tip of the blade. The priest unhesitatingly gives it to him, and later prays with a boy named Johann. In his room, Yuji thinks about the upcoming battle in the morning, certain that it'll take a large number of lives, possibly even Tina and Lisa's. Just then, his slimes suddenly call out, relaying that the dragon is getting even bigger, gathering energy from the magic in the woods. He remembers his adventurer examination again, where he asked if his unusually powered magic meant being unusually weak. He hadn't expected then that he was in a complete league of his own. Clenching his fists, he decides to try something out. Sneaking out in the middle of the night, Yuji runs off to face the blue dragon alone. Upon arriving, he orders all but one slime to fall back and goes through his list of spells. trying to pick the perfect one for a single powerful strike. Settling on the hellfire of decimation, he shoots a blast at the beast, which remains unaffected despite its weakness against fire. Returning the favor, it sends out rays that destroy the entire area around them. Fortunately, he was able to put up a barrier in time, but the enemy seemed to have gotten bigger again. Receiving information from the slime observing the battle, he deduces that it's destroying the forest on purpose and absorbing the magic stored inside. Testing something out, he takes his new dagger out. If it can focus the Hellfire's firepower on one point, it's sure to do some damage. Planning to slip below the enemy, they rush in, barely blocking its rays from hitting. As it prepares to blast them again, he throws a slime up and uses it to summon another barrier. With this chance, he reaches the spot below the beast, jumping up and having his barriers serve as platforms. Now above, he dashes in and pierces his blade into its eye, then activating Hellfire and concentrating it to the impaled tip. It crashes to the ground with half its face burned off, but still sends Yuji flying through stone pillars with its tail. He was able to defend in time, but his stats and resources are already pushing past their limits. All he can do is block the enemy's destructive blasts and think of a way to get another hit in. Just then, a window indicates that he'll be able to use Divine Strike in less than a minute. Reaching his hand up, he casts the Divine Magic, and a blazing beam of light bursts from the sky, devouring the dragon's body and sending it to the ground. While it's paralyzed, Proud Wolf catches his master and speeds to their target. Piercing the dagger into its neck, he casts Hellfire again and drags the blade across to sever the head completely. The dragon's body disappears in a flash of light, and the sky turns back to normal. They head back to bed, again unaware of the huge fight's remnants. In the morning, he's awoken by Rayard. Apparently, Style left the town after sharing that someone defeated the dragon last night. Already knowing who was responsible, he tells the young man that he can ask them for help, but walks away without pushing him for answers. At breakfast, the two ladies are delighted that the mission was called up, but their names will still go down in history. Asked where he could head next, they recommended going to Ricardo. It's a relatively cozy place, and certainly won't have any weird events like a blue dragon. He goes on his way as the sun rises, leaving behind a few hidden slimes to watch his friends. In the forest, he suddenly receives a message from Dryad, asking him to come quickly. Despite the urgency in her voice, she simply shows him various mushrooms that have sprouted on his battlefield against the dragon. She asks him to help pick them all, so she can make powerful sage and mana potions. Finding them useful, he collects them all within seconds, and she quickly gets to brewing. However, issues arise as the magic is too potent, something that can be fixed if they have crystal clear water. Solving the problem, Yuji reshapes his barrier and proceeds to use it as a water distiller. Moreover, he casts a purification spell with the slimes. While waiting, she recalls the first time they met, when he rescued her from having her magic energy completely depleted. Someone had left a magic stone, which drained the forest of its power, and in turn hers. He easily dispelled the curse, but monsters soon emerged from the stone, eradicating them without a sweat. She thanked him for his help by summoning countless Drya flowers. Back to the mushrooms, they're likely infused with Dragon's Grace, a special power only found at the site of fallen dragons, causing mushrooms to sprout. They're neither good nor bad, but are capable of decimating forests in the wrong hands. The distilling finishes, allowing her to complete a few vials of the potions. Handing them to him as promised, she returns to the Drya forest. Continuing with their journey, they pass by a foggy area and oddly sense a human presence. Following it, they reach a small village where all the locals stare and smile at them eerily. Already feeling something wrong, a man approaches and invites the traveler to stay for a night and wait for the fog to disperse. Insisting, he asks him to join them for a meal. Brought to a house, the man imposingly questions the purpose of his visit and fortunately accepts the explanation that he just happened to pass by. He apologizes for the staring, saying that the people of Messias are unaccustomed to travelers. They successfully depart, looking back at the strange village. Meanwhile, the man reports the unexpected visit, waving it off, believing that he was an ordinary tamer. The next day, they will proceed as planned and extract Dragon's Grace from Delight Canyon. Meanwhile, Yuji and his companions make it through the fog, but are somehow met with a harsh blizzard. Treading through the snow, the cold begins to affect the others. As such, he uses an insulation spell to keep them warm. They finally reach Ricardo and ask the guards about the weather. Apparently, The cold hit out of nowhere about 10 days ago, claiming a few of their own. Saying that he's visiting for the food, the guard directs him to Tiger Flame's pavilion. On his way, he sees empty streets, covered in inches of snow. Reaching the restaurant, the girl inside unfortunately tells him that they're closed until further notice, as they've been forced to use all their cooking firewood for heating. That said, the establishment seems too promising to pass up, so he offers to gather some firewood. Regardless of her saying freshly chopped wood won't work, he sets out for the woods. Summoning an axe and using a combat skill, he unintentionally chops a line of trees with a single swing. After chopping and organizing them neatly, he moves on to dry them out, trying a new moisture absorption skill. In no time, the firewood is brought to the restaurant's chef. However, he says it's too dry and would burn too strongly for cooking. Yuji takes the log back and returns its moisture before the old man even finishes complaining. To his shock, it's perfectly suitable for cooking. The stoves are immediately lit, and the chef gets to work, certain that he can make something special with such nice wood. Asked how much he has, the tamer has his slime release the piles of wood and perfectly return their moisture. Absolutely delighted, the chef cooks him a succulent steak with vegetables. With a single bite, the burst of flavors brings out religious images of divinity in his mind, taking the spot as the best meal he's had in this world. He thanks them for the meal and says he'll come back tomorrow to try their specialty stew. That said, the girl feels bad for using all the wood for cooking, while the entire town is low on wood. Hearing this, Yuji gets up to leave, saying he'll be back tomorrow. In the Adventurers Guild, he sees countless requests for firewood and presents his ID at the counter. The staff gives a brief explanation and tells him to head to the firewood leader, Wodka, for further instructions. Doing as told, the instructor easily accepts him, as their men can't keep up with the daily demand, even with help from other nearby villages. Yuji asks about Messias, but is told that it's been abandoned for a long time. The man asks him to show what he can do, so he shocks everyone by effortlessly chopping down a line of trees. Proceeding, he cuts them to perfect measurements and leaves them with no complaints but many questions. As the slimes dry the wood out, he continues cutting trees, and they eventually fill the guild with firewood for everyone to use. After briefly talking about a legendary beast tamer who used slimes to transport materials, he then says he has more wood stored. Expecting that he was talking about wood for the guild, they're stunned to hear that he meant the entire town. Dissatisfied with supplying just enough for a few days, he asks about taking on more logging jobs, making them worry about his health. He smiles in appreciation, knowing that people in that world care about others. As the firewood piles up stories high, so does his payment. A while later, he's finally served the restaurant's famous cattle and herb stew, even bringing the raw goods for his companions as a thank you for his service. The tender meat fills his mouth, and the harmonious flavors of richness create a dish for the gods. As if transcending the world, their tears fall, and he orders another. Just then, his eyes gleam when the chef says it still isn't his best work. He's informed that their herb and vegetable garden has been infested with monsters, compromising the quality of their dishes. He immediately gets up and heads to their field. The entire team mobilizes to defeat the greedy boar that's bound to be somewhere in the woods. A group spots the beast, which looks more like a dinosaur than anything. It quickly falls to his magic, and they proceed to take down every last boar in the area. Just then, they find an odd blue orb. They convene with Dryad, who admits that even she can't identify it. Placing his hand, he sees it absorb his magic and turn a darker shade, so he deduces that it must be a dragon's grace. Realizing what's wrong, she says it must be absorbing all the magic in the town, causing the widespread frost. It's the first time he's heard of temperature being affected, and is also told that it never appears naturally. For now, he dispels the stone, and instructs his slimes to check if they can find any more. A while later, they've purified over 100 stones, all spread out in a circle, making him wonder if there's something in the center. Reaching his destination, he feels something off, as if something is in camouflage. He tells his companions to leave, as he plans to destroy the entire forest. While it might not sound good to Dryad, she acknowledges the risk the ecosystem is at. Using hellfire to raise the perimeter, a crater reveals an entrance to the underground. Willing to save the town for their food, he excitedly opens the door. Smashing the door in, they see a deep descent into the dark. Dryad is told to return to the woods, as it might be unsafe inside. Passing through a corridor, they find an oddly high-tech machine in an unbelievably large room. In another room, they see magic stones being manufactured and spot a couple of men running around. Checking on the magic infuser, they confirm that a stone is broken and run off to inform a man named Javier. He takes note to remain cautious while exploring, but the slimes jump around excitedly, prompting him to cast a stealth spell and leave things to them. On the surface, he sees many diverging paths and is told that some have found the men from before. Following, they reach a dead end and see a pair of levers on two sides. Pulling on both at the same time, the door opens, and they soon find another end, with a ladder leading to the surface. As they climb it with no trouble, they reach Messias, the same place Yuji is looking at from above. As they report to Javier, the slimes see their robes, and their master identifies them as members of the cult, following the blue moon of salvation. It seems that they've occupied the abandoned village and have built an underground lab to manufacture magic stones. The leader is shocked to hear that a huge explosion suddenly destroyed their curse well and damaged their magic infuser. He orders them to gather all who are available to form a search party for cursed magic ores. Briefing the small group about the situation, he instructs them to retrieve as many of the ores from the forest as possible. Moreover, they are to kill any witnesses without worrying about making it look unsuspicious. As they're getting out of hand, Yuji tells his slimes to encircle the perimeter. Confirming that there are no civilians inside, they explore and store any informative materials. A couple reach their border and unhesitatingly take their lives when captured. The slimes find another door and are unable to find a way in. Racking his brains, he instructs them to stand before each lamp and channels wind magic to blow all the flames out. The door opens to reveal a pile of treasure. Just then, a member arrives and finds the hideout completely emptied out. As they begin to catch on to what's happening, Yuji considers eliminating them all. However, he stops as they talk about the cleansing flame, which will engulf the world in flames should all of them die there. Thinking that there must be no one there aside from them and their intruder, they take their blades out and unhesitatingly take their own lives, activating the cleansing flame. The slimes are ordered to group up. He encases them in a barrier and blasts them back to safety. Moving on, he covers the village with multiple barriers, but it isn't enough to hold back the erupting flames. Unable to find another barrier, he decides to make one himself. He studies the properties of the explosion and successfully creates a new defensive spell. The array locks it in a huge cube, but his magic power is rapidly depleting. As he nears his limit, the top of the cube pops off, releasing the blast into the sky. Cutting it close, they successfully defend against the cleansing flame and return to the Ricardo. The citizens are delighted to see him safe, not knowing where he vanished to after fighting the greedy boars. Recalling the two huge explosions, they thought meteors were raining down. Fortunately, none came close to the town, and the frost had begun to thaw from the heat. The next day is warm and sunny, giving them a reason to celebrate, with Yuji as the guest of honor. As someone who replenished their stock of firewood, he's earned everyone's respect and gratitude. While he feels that it's excessive, he raises his glass and toasts to a warm city. Everyone follows, and the celebration continues. The girl from the restaurant thanks him for handling their boar problem, adding that they've stocked up on the best herbs possible. As such, his long-awaited stew will finally be available. It's quickly served to the guest of honor, who falls unconscious upon taking a bite, transcending the world of flavors and crying in satisfaction. He wakes up in his room, still delighted by the stew, but gets to business and checks on the texts he stole from the enemy base. Taking the scrolls out, he's surprised as the ink fades, making him wonder if there's a spell cast. All but one are cleared of content, and it seems to be a list of names that the people of the organization were after. At the bottom, he sees his own name. Meanwhile, a couple of invaders are attacking a settlement, mercilessly killing each and every guard in sight. The man holds a similar list and sees the name Yuji at the bottom. Two mysterious assassins stand near a cliff, scanning the forest below for Yuji and his companions. Vowing to hunt down the adventurer and shred him to pieces, they finally spot Yuji and feel the excitement of slaying him in their hands. Meanwhile, in the forest, Yuji reflects on his decision to leave Ricardo after discovering his name on a hit list created by the Blue Moon of Salvation. Notifying the Adventurers Guild receptionist of his departure, he seeks guidance on his next destination. The receptionist suggests Boginia, renowned for its monster armor and ideal for someone like Yuji. She recommends visiting Geigel, a gruff yet highly skilled armorer. Back in the present, As Yuji and his companions press on, one of his slimes alerts him to being observed, a fact already noted by Yuji. Later, as Yuji is napping in the forest, the two assassins are hiding in the bushes and watching him closely. The male assassin wants to finish the adventurer immediately, but the female one disagrees, saying they need to observe the adventurer a little more, as the order was to observe him if he is a real threat. She reminds her partner that the guild is now suspicious of the mysterious deaths, so they need to be careful. Unbeknownst to the two, a slime is spying on them, and Yuji is listening to them and has their stats up. Upon reaching Beginia, Yuji heads directly to Geigel's shop, all the while under the watchful eyes of the assassins. Not detecting any suspicious behavior, the pair continues to surveil Yuji from a distance. They witness him being turned away from the shop due to insufficient funds and observe his string of misfortunes throughout the town. They even witness him use his slime to pick coins from the ground and use these to indulge himself in booze. The male assassin tells the woman that he has seen enough. However, the woman is not yet convinced. To give them a final push, Yuji gets a quest from the guild to battle rush bulls. In an attempt to deceive the assassins, Yuji pits Proud Wolf against a rush bull, causing the creature to cower in terror. To Yuji's own surprise, he swiftly dispatches the bull with a single blow, prompting a rediscovery of his own strength. While observing Proud Wolf, Yuji recalls their initial encounter with the formidable creature. In a forest, he encounters the majestic wolf and ensnares it in a magical net. Attempting to communicate, the white wolf prompts Yuji to cast monster telepathy. Tearfully, Proud Wolf apologizes and agrees to become Yuji's tamed companion. In the present, Yuji remains oblivious to Proud Wolf's true strength. Proud Wolf effortlessly dispatches the remaining rush bulls, causing the assassins to once again view Yuji with suspicion, suspecting him to be a more skilled tamer than he portrays. Upon hearing this, Yuji repeatedly casts heal on the rush bulls to create the illusion that Proud Wolf is incapable of defeating them. This leads the assassins to perceive Yuji as weak, yet Proud Wolf's pride drives him to bolster his strength once more. So, Yuji applies both physical and magical buffs to the rush bulls, making them appear too formidable for Proud Wolf to handle. Despite this, Proud Wolf refuses assistance from Yuji's magic and bravely attacks the beasts, defeating them single-handedly. However, one bull manages to rise again and threatens Yuji, prompting him to use his magic to summon a sword and swiftly dispatch the creature with a single slash. This exposure worries Yuji, as he fears the two assassins will target him. Meanwhile, the assassins are astonished by the tamer's ability to summon a weapon and defeat a beast alone. After careful consideration, they conclude that Yuji is merely a regular tamer and depart. Before recalling the spying slime, Yuji overhears the assassins discussing their next target. Later that night, the assassins relay their findings about Yuji to their benefactor. Upon learning that Messias has been eliminated and the cleansing fire has been employed, the benefactor instructs them to investigate if the new target poses a threat. The assassins comply, reaffirming their loyalty by chanting, "Cleanse this tainted world." Following their conversation with the benefactor, the male assassin suggests that this time, they may draw blood, a notion the female assassin agrees with, revealing Father Style as their next target. Unbeknownst to the assassins, Yuji continues to spy on them using his slime. In order to prevent Style from being assassinated by the duo, Yuji casts an ice spell that instantly freezes them in place. After completing this task, Yuji contemplates why members of the Blue Moon of Salvation would target a priest, especially one their leader appears to know. The following day, Yuji returns to Geigel's shop and is almost turned away again by the apprentice worker when he requests armor for his slimes. However, Geigel intervenes and observes the slime intently. He scolds his assistant, stating that they are the strongest customers they have ever encountered. Geigel agrees to craft new armor for Yuji's slime, but encounters a problem, prompting him to gaze into the distant volcano. Deep within the fiery crater lies a formidable monster. Geigel informs Yuji that he cannot currently craft armor for him due to insufficient materials. The issue arises from Yuji's slime being stronger than the standard materials available. Despite Geigel's assistant doubting the significance of Yuji's tamed monsters, Geigel asserts that, when paired with Yuji, they become a formidable team. Recognizing the need for stronger materials, Geigel presents a lesser fire dragon orb to Yuji, explaining how superior materials contribute to better armor. Understanding the importance of quality materials, the adventurer acknowledges the significance of obtaining blue lesser fire dragon orbs, known to inhabit the nearby mountain, but rare and challenging to defeat. Gygal assures Yuji that, in exchange for a blue lesser fire dragon orb, he will create something valuable for him. Before setting out on his quest, Yuji inquires about the existence of normal dragons, to which Gygal responds that he has never heard of anyone slaying one in his lifetime. Mindful of Gygal's advice, Yuji heeds his words, visits the Adventurers Guild, and takes on a slew of requests related to the mountain area. The receptionist informs him about the resilience of lesser fire dragons against magic-based attacks due to their embedded gems and durable scales, making them immune to such assaults. Despite water being their weakness, the scarcity of water on the mountain and the complexity of water magic pose challenges. Undeterred, he expresses confidence in his water magic skills. The receptionist also warns him about the river's inhabitants and advises caution. Fearless, he chooses to defeat Piranha along with the other requests. Later, Yuji and his tamed monsters approach a volcano, where he tames some red slime and learns from one of them that it's safe to proceed past the volcano. Upon reaching the river inhabited by piranhas, Yuji casts a new spell called Slime Net, allowing the slimes to search for the piranhas. Eventually, a fire slime discovers a hole, prompting a slime to follow. Soon after, the two slimes are pursued by a piranha trapped in the slime net. Yuji retrieves the piranha from the river's depths and freezes it after it breaks free. However, the piranha thaws, and Yuji resorts to casting a fireball spell to vanquish it. Advancing further, Yuji encounters the lesser fire dragons, and since his slimes are too hesitant to attack, he casts water cannon on one and collects its orb. Encouraged by Yuji's lead, the slimes join the fray, aided by Yuji's water cannon, and take on the remaining lesser fire dragons. Subsequently, a slime reports the discovery of a blue lesser fire dragon and provides visual confirmation. Coordinating with his slimes, Yuji strategically surrounds the blue lesser fire dragon with 10 slimes, and together they unleash the water cannon upon it. Despite their efforts, their attempts fail, prompting Yuji to cast an ice spell, which proves insufficient. Resorting to casting the spell tenfold, Yuji finally defeats the blue lesser fire dragon and directs his slimes to hunt down the rest of the lesser fire dragons on the mountain, marking the end of their mission. Later, Yuji reports his successful subjugation of the lesser fire dragons and the piranha to the Adventurers Guild, which surprises the receptionist. She also files an emergency survey form regarding the piranha's unusual behavior. Subsequently, Yuji visits Gygal's shop to deliver 2 blue lesser fire dragon orbs and 202 lesser fire dragon orbs. Honoring his promise, Gygal forges gear for Proud Wolf and Sura using the blue lesser fire dragon orbs. Upon trying out their new armor, the monsters exhibit remarkable speed, and during a durability test, Yuji casts multiple stat-boosting spells on them, both emerging unscathed. Finally, Yuji casts an ice spell, creating a massive iceberg in their practice area. Returning to Gygal's shop, Gygal warns that Yuji's offensive spells would break the gems used in the crafted armor, but a fire dragon would work. One lives in the volcano's center, but Gygal warns not to mess with it. As Yuji contemplates how to proceed and recalls the receptionist filling out an emergency survey form, a slime reports that the lesser fire dragons are acting strange. Upon receiving a visual of the lesser fire dragons, Yuji recalls how the monsters in Fastan acted similarly. Recalling the voice from the orb associated with the blue moon of salvation, Yuji has a Proud Wolf, and a pack of slime investigates the area for anyone there. They spot a couple of men, each carrying 2 barrels on their backs, and just then, the volcano erupts with the fire dragon emerging from its center. Yuji witnessed the volcano erupt as the fire dragon emerged from it. He immediately contacted Proud Wolf's group and was relieved to learn they were all fine. However, his relief was short-lived, as he received a report that 2 suspicious men carrying barrels were heading towards the location of the fire dragon. An invisible slime eavesdropped on the conversation of these 2 men, who seemed to be targeting the fire dragon. One of them mentioned confidently that their plan was infallible, thanks to the instructions they had received from individuals in Darien. Curious about the contents of the barrels, Yuji decided to take action. He cast a magical net spell in hopes of capturing the men, but they skillfully dodged the magic. Realizing it might be a trap, Yuji persisted and had another slime cast magical net again. This time, however, one of the men threw a sword at him, piercing the slime. Despite their cover being blown, Yuji managed to use another slime to ensnare the men in a magical net, rendering them unable to move. Cornered and faced with the prospect of interrogation, the men chose to end their own lives. Yuji deduced that they were part of the Blue Moon of Salvation, a notorious group. He then instructed the slime to investigate the barrels. They discovered that the water inside had been contaminated by the malignance of magical stones, likely intended for use against the fire dragon. Concerned about the potential danger, Yuji summoned Dryad for her insight. Dryad explained that the contaminated water could indeed pose a threat to the fire dragon. Acting quickly, Yuji cast Dispel Extreme through a slime, purifying the water barrels and neutralizing the threat. With the immediate crisis averted, Dryad returned to the forest. However, the slimes noticed that the lesser fire dragons in the area were starting to act erratically. Just then, the innkeeper knocked at Yuji's door and warned him that heavy rain would soon pour down. Outside, the village's evacuation begins as thunder rolls overhead and rain starts to fall. Yuji, positioned outside the village with the volcano in view, remembers the innkeeper's caution about the fire dragon's tendency to remain dormant during rainy weather. Soon, Proud Wolf's group alerts Yuji that the dragon is approaching his location, and they mention the adverse effects of the rain on the lesser fire dragons. The innkeeper then recounts how 50 years prior, during the last heavy rainfall, the fire dragon unleashed devastation upon Beginia. As the villagers continue to flee, Yuji directs Proud Wolf's group to the first river blocking the dragon's path, instructing Proud Wolf to gauge whether the dragon intends to cross it. They witness the dragon's passage, which results in the death of piranhas and the evaporation of the river due to the dragon's intense heat. Moving to the second river, Yuji prepares for a confrontation, ordering Proud Wolf to stand against the fire dragon. Despite attempts to freeze it, the dragon proves resilient. When it approaches the second river, Yuji releases the barrier he had constructed to create a surge of water that submerges the fire dragon. Despite this, the dragon persists, attempting to launch a massive fireball toward the village. Yuji intervenes through slime, casting the permafrost curse from a distance to freeze and shatter the fire dragon, leaving behind its precious jewel alongside a peculiar device. In the aftermath, Yuji visits Geigel's shop, seeking to craft something using the fire dragon's jewel. Later at the Adventurers Guild, he inquires about Darien, only to be informed by the receptionist that it's a secretive place valuing privacy and shunning outsiders. Showing the receptionist the mysterious device found at the volcano, Yuji learns that it's an artificial rainmaker used widely to combat droughts, with its origins obscured. Remembering the conversation of the men he had trailed earlier, Yuji suspects a connection between Darien and the rainmaker's origins. The next day, Yuji goes to Geigel's shop and picks up the armor Geigel crafted using the fire dragon's jewel. After trying it on, the blacksmith asks for Yuji's name, but Yuji prefers to remain anonymous. Yuji and his companions have arrived in the town of Darien. The adventurer walks to its guild and sees that other adventurers are staring at him the moment he comes in. He looks at the quest board but can't concentrate due to the people staring at him, and he leaves. The man left a slime in the place so he could learn about what people were saying about him. As expected, two men in the place discuss what they know about Yuji and review the fact that he was once a target of their assassination, only for their organization to reverse the order. They discuss how they should try to end him again, only to backtrack since it might lead to exposing the Blue Moon of Salvation's cover. They then discuss how their plans with the artificial rain machine failed since someone took down the fire dragon, and how they must report everything they know to a man known as Master Walter. Meanwhile, Yuji is at a tavern, listening to their conversation, and becomes intrigued as he hears the name of their master. He then gets interrupted by two men with cloaks approaching him. While one is a young man, the other is Father Style. They bring him to the church, where Yuji and the father can talk. Style tells him about his past. He said that he and his adventurers started an organization called the Church of the Blue Moon to honor their fallen comrades. They soon found many followers among the outcasts and downtrodden. Among them was Walter, who is so devoted to his faith in the divine that he quickly became Style's right-hand man, or so it seems. One day, the divine graced Style with the command to dismantle the Church of the Blue Moon, but the father chose to ignore the command out of love for his companions. Days later, the church was attacked by members on the inside, and the father was the only one who survived, thanks to the help of his companions. He realized that the divine warned him of Walter and his followers' betrayal, who had overtaken the church by brute force. Since then, Walter and his followers have focused on cleansing the world and renamed the church the Blue Moon of Salvation. He believes that the divine has warned him that Yuji is the prophesied emissary who will stop the tainted light that is Walter. As proof, he tells Yuji that the emissary is said to wield the dagger of Kethis. After Yuji has left the church, Johann, the father's younger comrade, asks why he did not tell the Tamer the entire truth. The father tells him that he does not need to know everything right now. Elsewhere, Yuji is in his inn room, thinking about the prophecy. He remembers when he was back in Fasten, when the guild girl, Lily, talked about a prophecy she heard of a beastmaster who uses slime. Yuji thinks he needs to know more and wants to ask Lily about it tomorrow. The next morning, Yuji heads back to the church, but Father Style and Johann are not there. He asks his slime if they have seen two men in robes leaving the town. Luckily, one of them tells him that he potted them before heading out early in the morning into the woods. Elsewhere, Father Style and Johann are in front of a tree that has a dark void portal on it. The father speaks an enchantment, neutralizing the dark void and revealing the cave entrance within. The two head in and see that there is a huge, dark passage inside, with a castle in view. In the forest, Yuji and the slimes are searching for the father, and they are having a hard time. Some of the slime tells him that they have seen two people getting into a dark entrance, so Yuji asks them to show him the way. They led him to the same tree as before. He uses a spell, neutralizing the black void like before, and then enters the cave. Meanwhile, Style and Johann are entering the castle. They have reached the throne room, where followers in black robes are waiting for them. Father Style sees Walter and tells him that he will not hesitate to stop him this time. Walter commands his followers to attack Style, but the old man easily dispatches all of them. Suddenly, the father is tied up in magical ropes and then electrified. It turns out it is Johann who has done it. Style wakes up, still tied up. As he looks at Johann, who is guarding him, he realizes he has been Walter's spy all this time. Walter tells the father that their plan started by leaving a magic stone in the woods, only for someone to neutralize its curse, and so they have been hunting down the one responsible ever since. Johann reports to his master about how the father gave the dagger of Kethis to the emissary, and that the two of them have been in hiding, so that the Blue Moon would not discover who the emissary is. Since then, the emissary has been busy stopping their every plan throughout the land. Walters tells the father that it doesn't matter since the divine will grant their ultimate plan no matter what. He then revives the corpses of his fallen followers into undead vampiric-like creatures, so that he can grant Style the death he is unafraid of. Just as everything looks like there is no hope, a part of the wall explodes, and as the ashes clear, Yuji comes to the rescue. Johann casts Fireball at Yuji, but it is useless to the hero's barrier. Yuji then frees Style, and both confront the villains. Walter is pleased to have finally met the emissary. He commands his vampiric zombies to attack the heroes. Meanwhile, he and Johann retreat to the technologically advanced room. Walter sits on the throne at its center. The moment he does, the device lights up, and it puts tribal markings on the villain's body, empowering him. Yuji and Style suddenly enter the room, as they have already taken care of the villain's minions. However, Walter is not deterred, as the machine is slowly turning the villain into a demonic monster. Yuji casts a fireball directly at the villain, but the monster still comes out of the transformation as a giant demon. With just a swing of the arm, the floor explodes. Luckily, the heroes manage to evade the attack. The demon grows wings and other features of a dragon. As it charges its energy breath, Yuji readies his barrier. While the energy breath does not damage the barrier, the demon charges at them. Before it can reach the barrier, Yuji unleashes a fireball from behind the monster, only for it to evade it with its fast flight. The adventurer then commands Proud Wolf to jump while the slimes are on its back. All the slimes jump up high, creating a rain of fireballs. Despite this, the demon avoids it all. Other slimes then spit out fireballs, only for the barrage to prove ineffective. Yuji then throws the slime on his shoulder like a baseball pitch, and while it misses the demon, it spits out an armor that Proud Wolf and the slime itself wear. The armor powers up the duo, making them charge at the demon with lightning speed. They then finish the assault with a fireball more powerful than before. The demon comes out of the explosion, heavily wounded, with its left arm ripped off. However, it sees the pile of zombie corpses and absorbs one of them to heal its wounds to full power. Yuji summons a fireball, ripping its arm off again, only for the demon to absorb more of his zombies to heal it, plus adding even more arms to him. Yuji then unleashes a barrage of fireballs, but the demon heals too fast for it. The demon gets angered and goes near, but Yuji creates a barrier before it can unleash its barrage of physical attacks. Its attacks are so powerful that the barrier slowly gets shattered. The moment the barrier shatters completely, he neutralizes its attack by trapping its right arm with a magic net. Proud Wolf and the slimes then work together to wrap the monster with even more magic net. While the beast is immobile, Yuji casts Hellfire of Damnation at it. Despite being about to die, the demon is smiling, saying that it doesn't matter to him if he eliminates the emissary. In his last breath, Walter prays that the divine grant him his wish. Suddenly, the device at the center of the room lights up the entire base. Anything that is not protected by Yuji's barrier is absorbed into the light, including the demon's corpse and Johann. The light collects into a giant mass, then dissipates into a man, evoking light on parts of his body like bright wounds. Without moving his mouth, the man introduces himself as the Sage. Father Style believes that Walter's death caused the summoning of the Sage, who once saved the world. He tells of the Sage's history, when he was once the emissary of the Divine Rose who faced a mighty dragon, only to be defeated. He realizes that Walter has sacrificed himself and all of his followers to make a summoning ritual to resurrect the Sage. The Sage summons Hellfire of Damnation, so Yuji summons a barrier at the last minute. While he protects himself and his companions, the entire cave disappears into ashes, and their battle is brought to the surface. As the enemy floats to the air, Yuji readies his slime and wolf companions. He turns on every power-up boost on them, and they charge at the Sage with lightning speed. The moment they get near, the man summons Hellfire of Damnation, so they retreat. Yuji then lets the slimes surround the man so that they can all cast fireballs in all directions. However, all fireballs are neutralized by the man's barrier. While the man is busy with the fireballs, some of the slimes sneak behind him, only for the man to see what they are doing and cast Hellfire on them. The Sage keeps on casting Hellfire, and Yuji realizes he must have infinite MP. The adventurer then commands the slimes to go near the man again. Just before the Sage casts a spell on them, the slimes turn into ice, freezing the Sage with them. The Sage breaks his ice prison, but the slimes use the shattering ice pieces as platforms and get near the man to burn him with flame. However, the man is not damaged, and he summons Hell of Decimation with 10 times the power in Yuji's direction. Yuji counters with his own Hell of Decimation, times 10, leaving them at a standstill. It turns out that his spell is more powerful, and the villain is the one who ends up in an explosion. He comes out of the ashes, still unharmed. The villain then summons a powerful spell towards the sky, activating rain machines from different locations that put the sky into a cloud of darkness. As it rains, all the monsters in the region become wild. Monsters are going wild in Fastan, and Yuji needs to use his slimes there to get rid of them with fireballs. The heroes have realized that the Salvation's curse is spreading throughout many lands with the help of the rain machines. The Sage addresses Yuji as a fellow Sage, and he tells him of his regret for failing to eliminate the mighty dragon in his time. No matter how many dragons he conquers, there is always another one that will take its place. However, now he feels like he has the power to conquer all conflicts in all the lands, bringing salvation to all. Despite looking at the young man as his equal, he cast another Hellfire of Decimation at him. Yuji counters with his own Hellfire, until both of them are spamming the mighty spell over and over. While Yuji is busy countering the villain's attacks, his slime and Kilia reports to him that an army of monsters is getting closer to the town. As with one hand is busy with the villain, he uses his other hand to control the slime and Kilia and attack the monsters with fireballs. He watches as his stats get lower and lower from all his efforts. Dryad then calls in to tell him that the people of Fastan are gathering in the town square. There, Aegis, the guild branch chief, is telling the people that they must fight the monsters coming. Gale, the adventurer, is inspired by Yuji's action of protecting them in the past and tells the others that it's their turn to protect the town. It turns out the people of Kilias are also in the town square and are also getting ready to fight their monster attack. Ricardo and Darian are also getting ready for battle in the name of Yuji. Our hero remembers when he was still a game developer and how he always worked alone in front of his computer, not allowing anyone else to help him. Now, however, he looks at all the faces he met in his travels and sees how all of them are ready to fight for their town. He tells himself that maybe teamwork is not so bad. He opens up all his controls and transfers power-up boosts to all the people in different towns. They become so energized that they can take out monsters with ease. Yuji now feels more confident that he can put all his focus on dealing with the main bad guy. Style suddenly calls in using the slime, and he tells Yuji that the divine has told him about aligning the sun and the moon as one star in the sky for judgment to come. The adventurer looks into the sky and wants to try something, so he gets his slimes to give him the restorative serum Dryad has given him. With a drink, he retrieves the power he had 10 minutes earlier. Now that he is ready for another round, he summons his magic platforms to jump to the sage's level. The sage asks Yuji why he is protecting the world, but he says he has no reason. Yuji then remembers all the people he has met and answers that he needs to stop him because he thinks the world is fine as it is. The sage accepts his answer and readies for another clash. The villain summons numerous hellfires, forcing Yuji to counter with his own. He then sees his video game options, sees the attack, Divine Strike, and wonders if it will work as the judgment style talked about. He activates it, summoning lightning from the sky that effectively hurts the sage. He uses it again, and it hurts the villain a second time. Seeing how effective it is, he summons the skill numerous times. However, he realizes that it does not do anything but slow him down. He changes tactics by bringing out the dagger of Kethis. He throws the blade into the sky and lets the lightning of Divine Strike hit it. The action causes the sun and moon to combine into an eclipse. Style realizes that it is what the divine was telling him about. Yuji goes near his villain and traps him in a magic barrier 6 times stronger than usual. He then transforms the barrier into a giant black cube and lets it fly into the air. While they are both within the barrier, Yuji stabs the sage with the dagger of Kethis, causing the villain to shatter like glass. The moment he gets defeated, so does the darkness of the sky disappear. Yuji gets back to the ground, but is so tired that he lies down. Days later, Style is at his church, thanking the divine for saving the world. He has come to understand that the prophecy has been fulfilled through Yuji, and he hopes to meet the young man again someday. As he walks in the woods, his usual companions ask him why he didn't stay in Darien. He tells them that since the Blue Moon still runs their guild, he would rather not stick around. He calls Dryad and asks if everything at Faston is going well. She reports that everyone is celebrating their victory. Elsewhere in the other town, they too are having a party to celebrate their victories. Back to Yuji. He is happy to hear that everyone is having a good time. Meanwhile, the Blue Moon remnants at Darien are having a meeting, since it has been long since they heard word from Walter. They move on from the setback and say their plans to purify the world is still moving forward. Yuji's slime is listening in, so he hears every word they say while he is in the woods eating his dinner. A pack of tiger monsters then surrounds his camp, and so he and his companions are ready for battle. The next morning, Yuji is at the guild in an unidentified town. He tells the guild registry girl that he has successfully hunted the cannibal tigers from a listed quest. Since the man says he worked alone, the girl thinks he has lost his friends during the battle with the tiger and cries for him, making Yuji uncomfortable. Megia, the guild chief, sees what is happening. She asks Yuji if he is magic adept, but he tells her he is only a tamer. Megia says she has heard stories of a powerful tamer. The registry girl realizes that Yuji is the tamer hero everyone is talking about, and as she reacts in amazement that she is in front of someone so powerful and heroic, everyone in the guild looks at Yuji in awe.